Great. So, hi, everyone. Welcome back to another session of this ongoing Ask the Editor series. I am super excited today to welcome Anne Beman and Jim Gearhart, editors of Tahoma Literary Review. And thank you to all who have come out. I'm having so much fun with these interviews. I hope you're enjoying watching them. And hopefully it's not just me having fun here, but at any rate, these are great. So if you have any questions, any suggestions at any time, please email me. If you're an editor watching this and you want to participate, please let me know. So we will jump right in. Anne Beman is the nonfiction editor for Tahoma Literary Review, and Jim Gearhart is the managing editor. And a little bit about this magazine from their About section. We produce this literary journal with the aim of contributing to and sustaining a healthy literary ecosystem. We pay for all of the poetry, fiction, and nonfiction in our pages, which is great. Every member of our staff is paid. A major goal of Tahoma Literary Review is to show that writers and publishers can support each other, not only artistically, but also financially. We are committed to fairness in the editorial process. We don't solicit work for our pages. Everything we print comes from the open submission queue. And full disclosure, I had a story in Tahoma Literary Review several years ago, and it was just an awesome experience. I worked with the editor on the story, and you know, I'd be happy to talk about that, but I want to hear more from you guys. But it really was just a wonderful, wonderful experience working with you guys. So thank you for all that you do, and thanks for coming out today.
Thank you, and that's great to hear that it was a good experience.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was very, it was Shun Lai, and she was incredibly thorough and thoughtful. It was great. So anyway, so let's jump right in and tell us, so what are the origins of Tahoma Literary Review? When did it start? Why did it start? What is the origin story here?
Yeah, Anne should.
Okay, well, okay, so it started, I want to say 2014, and the reason I'm not sure is because it was started by two friends and colleagues of ours. We were all in the same MFA program back in the day, and so Kelly Davio and Joe Ponapinto started the magazine. Shun Lai joined them kind of midstream, and then Joe and Kelly needed to step away for there was some non-compete with their jobs and just other issues. So we came in, Jim Gearhart, Mayor Heron Hake, Shun, and I all took over the magazine in 2017. So we started with issue, our eyes started with the issue in 2011, I want to say, or maybe 2010. Am I right on that? No, sorry. 2017. What did I say? 2017. It was issue 11, and it was in 2017. Yeah. So, and it came about because Joe and Kelly and we continued that the thesis that literary journals, we should be compensated for what we do. We are professionals. We are professional writers, and we want to support that in the industry.
Absolutely. I remember talking to Kelly Davio at AWP, and that was exactly, she expressed that as part of the mission, and she was quite firm about that. And I thought it was terrific.
I'd say, I think that was pretty strong influence of that writing program that we were all in. It was something that program isn't around anymore, unfortunately, but but professional development was something, and the building of community was something that was really an integral part of that program. And so I think, that kind of inspired Joe and Kelly to bring that theme to the magazine and for us to continue it.
So how do you sustain a literary magazine that can pay writers? Because I'm sure a lot of editors say, we would love to pay our writers, but we just can't. It's not feasible. So what goes into, how do you get the funds to support that?
So our main funds are that we charge for submissions, and that certainly can be a flashpoint for discussion.
Mhm.
And we are independent. We don't have any other supporters. It's an independent magazine. And so we do charge for submissions and our subscriptions and issue sales. And, we do take donations as well, but really paying for collecting submission fees is a primary, it's kind of primary chunk.
Mhm.
We're talking about other means, but they're all just sort of ideas at this point. And so yeah, that's our model at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, the transparency, I know submission fees are sort of controversial, but it's good to be transparent. I mean, I think if you're paying writers, that's fantastic.
And we started something, I think this last issue, or maybe 2 issues ago, where we opened a category for kind of historically marginalized writers,
Mhm.
and we waived the submission fees, and we set a cap on it. But so far, all of our submissions have been within that cap. The people, say for whatever reason, they can use that category.
Sure.
And at the same time, we added a donation piece to the submission fees.
Mhm.
So you can, if you're able to, you can, on top of the submission fee, you can make a donation.
Mhm.
And I have to say, I was really impressed with the response of the donations. It was a pretty substantial, addition for writers who were able to put in a little bit more.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I think we have 2 or 3 pieces in our upcoming issue that are going to be from the historically marginalized submission category. So pretty excited about that, kind of that change that I guess a little wrinkle or a little nuance to our submission policy.
Mhm. Mhm. Sure.
So,
So just to go to nuts and bolts for a moment, you publish nonfiction, poetry, and fiction year round?
yes, normally 3 times a year. This year's going to be 2. We decided to skip 1 issue, just with COVID and all the personal things and lots of reading to do and analyzing. We all just thought we could use a breather.
Mm-hmm.
We charged ahead during 2020, even with COVID, and it took a toll to the point where we thought, okay, if we're going to take a hiatus, this might be a good time to do that. And so it's been a nice, refreshing period to kind of catch up and take stock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important for editors. I mean, if you get to a point where you're like, I'm so stressed out, I'm not even reading these submissions fairly, like I do not have the bandwidth to even process these. I think that's a very kind of moral thing to do, is take a step back and say, we need to take a little break here. Yeah. So how many submissions do you get per month? What is your average submission rate, and what is your turnaround time for responses?
Oh, good questions. Okay.
I'm looking at Jim for our numbers.
yeah. If you submittable, always can kind of parse those numbers for you. So I'm just trying to remember which. We open kind of for 8 weeks at a time for each issue. And, within those, we'll usually get around 1,000 submissions for all the categories combined. So, and a lot of that, big chunk of that's usually goes in fiction and poetry. No, sorry, actually, poetry, fiction, and then nonfiction. It's kind of in the orders. And
and we do break that down into, nonfiction takes both long form up to 6,000 words and flash, which is, I think we say 1,500 and lower. yeah, and then same thing with both fiction and nonfiction have those categories.
Mhm.
And then poetry is it's one submission portal, but we do take long form poetry
Okay.
also. Yeah.
And
Great.
up to six poems within a submission if they're not
Okay.
long form.
And we have a question from an audience member. Do you still post all your submission stats on the website? That was a wonderful feature.
Oh, thanks, Matthew. Yes, we still, there are our transparency index. In fact, I guess I could have answered the question by going there.
We can go look for ourselves.
Yes, and we were talking before about transparency and our submission fees, and that's one place where we kind of post like, here's what we do with the submission fees and paying the contributors and
sure.
And there was a second part to your question.
What is your turnaround time?
Turnaround times.
Yeah.
And we say, so we get everything back within
3 months.
2 weeks of closing.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Did you and I say some two different things, or were we melding this?
3 months.
3 months, but Jim, you kind of gave a different detail. That's, I think, important. Within, then there's a certain within closing. There's a difference between. Yeah.
Oh, so you have your open submissions period, and then the submissions period closes, and then it's within 3 months of the submission period.
It's actually, well, as an editor, I try to get it within 3 months of each submission.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. And actually, this question has come up in the past with editors. People want to know, is there a difference like when they send you work in the submission period? Like, do you tend to look more favorably if your submission period just opens and you're fresh and you're excited, and then it's the end and you're kind of exhausted? Does it matter?
And that is a editor by editor response. I will say, I look kind of briefly at things, but I kind of tend to read the queue toward the end because I don't have it's sometimes there's some pieces that jump out at me and I know I have to grab them there because they're going to disappear. But for the most part, I want to be able. I don't want to be hasty in taking something when there might be something else that informs that, or another piece that I didn't think I wanted, but it was remarkable, but oh boy, it seems to fit with something. It absolutely depends on what's in the queue.
Sure.
And I need it all to be there to kind of to figure out
where
I'm going. Yeah.
And that's kind of a tension we face every issue, right? Because I think everybody wants to give everyone who's submitting a fair shot, but then there are those pieces we see that they're going to go fast if we don't reach out to them, and so it's and you also want to see what else is coming.
Right.
So,
do you ever accept a piece and then put it in the next issue?
Usually I inform someone. I'll kind of say, I want this piece. I cannot, I cannot put it in this current one. Is it okay with you if I hold it over? And I'll say to consider, or I will be specific. I'm taking it in the next issue, or I want to consider it for the next issue.
Right.
Yeah. So
that's hard.
Yeah.
So tell us, as a nonfiction editor, tell us what is a piece for you? What are the elements of a piece that makes you say, I must have this?
And I was just in the shower talking to myself about this, and then my answer is voice, and it's so hard to it's so boring and so hard to quantify or even qualify, but it's someone who knows, and that's not even true. it's someone who has a very strong voice that's consistent throughout, but many times it's a brand new writer and they don't know that they have that voice. They don't even know, but it's a consistent and insistent voice as well. A driven voice. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand voice is tricky to talk about because it's incredibly subjective. And so a voice that you just fall in love with might rub somebody else totally the wrong way. But it makes sense. It's just like a strong, I wonder, like, is authority too part of it, like an authoritative voice? Or
sometimes it's almost informed by region, jargon,
personality,
background. If it's a consistent, fresh voice, okay. If it's a consistent, fresh voice, there's an authority there. They're the only ones that can present that. So, so it's somewhat of an authority. It's not necessarily a learned authority.
I guess what I meant is confidence, maybe a better word than authority. Yeah. And in terms of the nonfiction, are you looking for personal essays? You're not looking for, definitely not reportage, not long form journalism, nothing like that, but more, how would you describe the nonfiction?
I would say I'm looking for, personal essays. We have, in the last couple issues, taken longer form essays, that were almost, they weren't academic, but they were certainly, how can I'll just stick with it. Yes, personal essays. I do like long form. I personally tend toward shorter lyrical pieces. So that's why those two pieces were quite remarkable to me. One was focused on the Missouri Compromise, and so
so sort of personal with maybe
it certainly was personal. He definitely wove in personal. So I can't say that it wasn't personal, but it was more long form, a little more journalistic than others.
Right. Okay. So a few more questions. Can you talk about the readers do you have readers that screen the submissions before they get to you? And how do those first readers get chosen? And you trust them?
We have two poetry editors, and we have a fiction editor with three associate fiction editors who, I'm not so sure that they're necessarily, I don't know quite how they work. I don't know that they necessarily screen. They all kind of have their groups of pieces that they're reading. Yes, and then our fiction editor is the final voice. So technically they are readers. Nonfiction, it's a pool small enough that I need to handle it on my own. If I have questions, I will I usually enlist Jim actually for my nonfiction. But
okay. And just for clarification, because I don't know if everybody knows about this. I don't actually really know. Like, what is a managing editor is not reading the submissions as they come in, but how is a managing editor different from a genre editor?
So for I guess for the role that I took on, I look at kind of like the I guess the administrative part of it largely. And what I get to do is I get to see the first. I'm the first one that gets to see everything together, like what everybody has selected for the issue, and we'll also kind of bring everyone together to talk about how the issue and the selections are looking. So I end up doing a lot of administrative stuff, watching the submissions and posting. What's one of my favorite parts is organizing the issue. Like once we have all 20, say 27 selections, and it's fun to go through and see what themes everybody has what kind of bubbles up to the surface and what is unifying these selections. And then and Ann and I tag team writing the introduction for the magazine and working with the editors once we have, or not sorry, working with the contributors once the selections have been made and refining the layout and managing the copy editing and proofreading stages.
Okay, sort of bigger picture stuff.
Yeah, but one of my ideas was to try to leave as much of the reading and selections and reviewing to the genre editors, and to kind of help usher everything through.
Okay.
Does that help? Does that help?
Yeah, sure. Okay. it makes sense.
Sorry to interrupt. I wanted for the selection of our associate editors. One of them, Stephen, has been with the magazine actually longer than Ann or Mare or I. Stephen Stiersky started and has been working with them with us since the beginning, really. And then Isaac actually had an essay appear in our issues, and when Leanne started, our new fiction editor, she also knew Isaac, so it was kind of so we brought him on board, and she had also worked with Bernard and brought him in as associate editor. So it's so far it's been kind of word of mouth and people we enjoy working with, and that's kind of a two-edged sword, because certainly we know we like and trust their selections because it's people we know, but we can also have to acknowledge it kind of can limit our pool of not going out and letting people know more generally that we're looking for associate editors. But that's how we have our pool of associate editors to date.
Okay. And yeah, sorry, did you want to add?
And going back to when we'd asked about turnaround times, we also introduced this last issue I know we've seen other magazines do this in a kind of an express. So can expedite review if you'd like to get a response sooner than our standard timeline. We do have like an add-on for that.
Yes, I saw that. And you also do a critique for a little bit of extra submission fee. Somebody can get feedback on their submission.
Yes, especially, and we're doing that in poetry and in fiction.
Okay.
I think we figure Anne has enough going on.
So, Anne, maybe I'll turn this question back to you, since you're sort of on the ground with the submissions as they come in. What do you want to see more of in your nonfiction? I'm sure you get asked this a lot. What do you want to see more of, and what do you absolutely like? I cannot read another essay about something.
I will say, and they've dwindled less. I get less of them, but I like to read craft essays about writing, but I almost always do a little reaction when I get an essay that has an inclusion about someone being in a writing program or in a writing situation or in a class. There are definitely exceptions, but we're all writers. Everyone who submits is a writer, and I kind of want to get away from, and maybe the content in the essay, maybe I'll tell the person the content in the essay is great. Can we, just somehow, I don't, there are other publications that this is the right tool for the job. But it's that is absolutely a personal choice for me. That's what I don't want to see. What I do want to see more of, I'm always loving I have seen a lot of great essays by poets who are telling me that they've just started writing nonfiction. I'm just trying nonfiction for the first time. Well, you're doing really well, because a lot of times it catches my eye quite quickly. So lyrical pieces. I'm wondering if Dylan's question is aimed at our fiction pool, and I can't respond for Leanne, but she does have a pretty eclectic eye, and so yeah, I can't speak to fiction, but
so do you actually see a lot of submissions that have to do with writing workshops? Is that why?
Yeah. Someone will say, someone will start the essay by we're sitting in the, you know, they're sitting in the room writing, and they're telling me how the piece was initiated, and it's almost like they could cut that part off,
right,
and just go into the piece,
right.
So I mean, every one of us, that's how we write, isn't it? I mean, we've all met either sat down and written with a bunch of people, or we're sitting in our room by ourselves starting a piece. So,
yeah. And I imagine if you're an editor of a literary magazine, you're pretty steeped in craft, you're talking about craft a lot, and you probably just want material that takes you away from the craft of writing, that is and travel or anything that really is not sort of.
I do love travel. I was initially, before I was a literary journal editor, I was a kind of an adventure travel journalist. So
cool.
I really do love outdoor and adventure pieces. Yeah.
And so we have a question here. This is silly, and I want to say no questions are silly. But this person always worried that expedited submissions is more likely to be a no.
Nope. Certainly not in no. And I think we all editors discussed this. It's I know I took at least one, maybe two pieces that were expedited. So it's pretty much and we talked about how that would be difficult, because if it's expedited, does that mean we need to either accept it or reject it? Well, what if we need more time to consider? So we have been very clear in responding that an expedited response is simply that we are responding to you. This is a piece that I want to continue to consider. Are you okay with that? You have paid for us to expedite your response. I want to make sure that the fact that I'm still considering it is a response. So, you know, one I think I took immediately, and then others, they, at least for nonfiction, and I think we kind of compared the poetry and the fiction editor, and I compared. We all kind of went with the same process, in that if we could immediately accept it, we did. If we needed to say thank you, no thank you, we did. But if it was something, and that was probably the majority of the pieces, the expedited pieces, that there was something there, we could not commit at that point. We needed to be able to look at what other pieces were going to be beside it and or instead of it. So
we talked a lot internally about how to frame kind of the expedited and the responses, and I think it was kind of a relief for all of us to say, hey, you know, we have read it and we're still interested and we're still thinking about it, and acknowledging that could be a good response, kind of think really helped us all be okay with because I think everyone was feeling pretty pressured to say, hey, I have to say yes or no within 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I tried to tell the person what it was that, you know, kind of be a little more specific with what about the piece, so that there was a discussion. And what I try to do, if I don't take something and I've been in love with it, or, you know, been talking to the writer about it, is when it gets accepted, and I'm almost sure that it will get accepted somewhere else, tell us about it and we will promote it, because we want to support this. It's not just what we can take from these writers. It's what can we get back to them? How can we support them? and hey, maybe they'll submit something else to us and we will take it. So I have a writer for this upcoming issue 21 that it's in production at the moment. I mean, because I was formerly the nonfiction editor at the Los Angeles Review. I think she submitted to me at least twice there and maybe 3 or 4 times at the Tahoma Literary Review. And I just thought, I mean, I love her writing. And I don't know how many times I could tell her that she would believe me. Finally she came. It was something where I was just, this is it. You know, the angels sang. It was the right piece at the right time. And so
so she submitted multiple times, and it was really close, but not quite there.
Yeah, and how many times can I say it's close, but it's not, it's just, when I say it's not right for this issue, it may be because we have 2 other pieces about butterflies and we don't want this to be the butterfly issue, or the other way around, like, oh, this will fit in because we have other, but it depends. It really is. It depends issue per issue. There's a zeitgeist, and people ask us all the time, do we have theme issues? We kind of don't need theme issues because they develop themselves.
Oh, that's interesting. And so that's a good lesson. So people who are rejected, even with a form rejection, should not be discouraged. They are welcome to keep submitting, keep trying.
Absolutely. And I mean, I try to say it differently every time, and because I'll say, I'm a fan of your writing.
Try us again.
It's not working for this issue. I really mean that. It's just not working for this issue. It doesn't mean,
Right. So another question, I don't know if you can answer this for the poetry, but are there certain themes that you like to see in poetry, and are there certain themes that make you cringe?
So, and Becky Appelsman, these are such great questions. Is there a way we can ask our fiction and poetry editors to kind of respond to those afterwards? Is there?
Sure. Yeah, I can. I'll download the chat and I'll send you the questions, and then if you send me the answers, I'll add it to when I post the interview. I'll add those.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know if you want to answer on behalf of the poetry editor. It's not here. Maybe we can assume no more poems about writing workshops. Safe bet.
One thing that I do appreciate the poetry editors do is they do seek out a variety of forms and styles for each issue. And that's a kind of a constant balancing that Mare and Jessica do, so that you kind of get a sample of different poetry forms in each issue. And then Jessica and Mare also pay a lot of attention to the poets and the voices and the people who are presenting them, and wants to keep a good, a strong balance and a diverse balance of folks in each issue. So that's not really getting to the meat of the topics, but
it's helpful.
Yeah. And we mentioned before that like long form, and that is something that Mare and Jessica really do like to include, because there's always a lot of venues for longer poetry, and we do like to include that when we can.
Okay. So going back to these submissions that are really, really close, but just not quite there, when will you work with an editor? Because my own experience with you guys was so wonderful, because Ishun loved this story, but there were still some edits that she wanted to see. And I think we went back and forth about 4 times. And it was also just like on a craft level, incredibly instructive. And I just learned so much working with her, and like in terms of how to structure a story and how to think about a story. It was really useful for me. But the story did not change that much. So I think the essence, she really liked the essence of what was there, but it was just a matter of like how it was kind of arranged. So I'm wondering, when will you take something that you really love, but you need to work with this writer, and when will you just kind of flat out not accept it?
When?
And it may be harder now. Like if you're getting more submissions now, that was back, the magazine was still a little young, so there might have been more time for the editors to devote. So if you know.
Yeah, no, she was consistently generous with her her willingness and desire to help people with editing their pieces. I feel the same way. We've had different situations with nonfiction. There have been times when usually what I do is I communicate with the person, and I will give us enough time, maybe ask them if we can work it through for the next issue. That way it gives us time, and I'm not stressed about working with someone and having to read through a lot of other people's pieces. One time I did take a piece that once Jim read it, he said, I don't think this is ready. I don't think this is, we can take this time. And so I went back and worked with the writer, and it was it was one of the best editing experiences I've ever had. And the writer really appreciated it, because a young writer who didn't know that editors were willing to do that. So yeah, it depends. So there's some that I call out and say, let's work on this. And then there are some that Jim tells me, we can't let this through. With fiction, Leanne, I know there's a nonfiction piece I took recently that Leanne worked with this writer, and then she submitted in nonfiction and said, "Hey, I've been working with Leanne," and I thought, okay, and it was good stuff. So yeah, and that's another thing is sometimes we're working cross genre.
So it sounds like it depends. Like if you come across a piece where you're just feeling like, I cannot let this one get away, but it's not quite there, and I really want to kind of see if we can get it there.
Yeah.
And again, not wanting to put words in the mouths of our other editors, but I think there'd be less of that in poetry. I think both Jessica and Mare kind of shy away from a lot of editing of poetry. So pretty much they'll take it as it comes. But,
yeah, with the exception of occasionally they'll get a lyric poem that they think they don't want to publish it as poetry, but they think that it will fit as a nonfiction piece, as a flash nonfiction piece. And so they've passed it on to me. Mare's passed on pieces a number of times. So.
I love that boundary between lyrical nonfiction and poetry. Prose poem, is it a prose poem or is it a flash nonfiction essay? And that's where some of I don't know, that boundary is where some of the most interesting stuff happens, I think.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. And there's that nonfiction piece we got in the next issue, which could have really shown up in the poetry section.
And that he's an example. He's also an example of who he was in our. I don't know if he was in our I think he was in our expedited. I think he was in a couple of the
different
categories that we've spoken about, where people might think, oh no, if they read it fast, it's more likely to be a no. Absolutely not. It was.
So it's a flash nonfiction.
It's flash nonfiction, but it's very prose poet. It's in line. Yeah, it's yeah.
Interesting. So just to clarify, so you guys are open for flash fiction, flash nonfiction, sort of regular length fiction and nonfiction, and poetry. Yeah,
and for nonfiction folks, I fight to not have the whole thing be flash nonfiction. I love nonfiction. I do, and I love essays of all lengths, but if I had the Ann Beman Quarterly or whatever, it would be flash nonfiction.
Well, it would be. You like flash nonfiction. Oh, okay, yeah.
I love it. Oh yeah. Everything. Yeah, it's my favorite.
Oh, cool. That's great to know. Okay. So if anyone out there is watching this and they have an awesome piece of flash nonfiction, you know where to send it.
I wanted to, tangential, it's going off topic, but I see Matthew Fitch's name in our group here. And I remember, I'm pretty sure it's Matthew who had a fantastic reading of his piece that we uploaded to our SoundCloud account. And so I wanted to kind of plug that we do encourage all of our contributors to read their pieces or have someone, you can go to Voice Bunny, or actually Voice Bunny has become something else, but you can read your piece, you can get someone to read your piece, but it's a fantastic, Matthew went to,
Oh man,
voice actor was fantastic. It was,
Oh, that's great.
That's one of the reasons I remember Matthew's name so well, is the reading of his piece was super dramatic and really well done. And I think that the SoundCloud portion of of what we do is really helps and enhances each issue and helps writers. I would say a majority of them express some sort of nervousness about, oh, I've never done this before, or I don't know how this is going to look. You know, some of them are pros and have done it before, but a lot of people, it's kind of a first experience of recording their own writing and reading their pieces for recording. And I think it's a nice either intro or continuation of that practice.
And are people of all the submissions invited to do that? So flash as well as longer? Okay.
Yeah.
And just a nuts and bolts question for the flash nonfiction, is it under 1,000 words or under 500 words?
I think we say 1,500, but in my book, like if I'm writing flash nonfiction and submitting it, it's usually 1,000 or 750 and under. But for us, 1,500 is what we say.
Okay. And are there absolute no-nos in a submission? I guess maybe we'll talk about in a submission and then in the guideline. Like if somebody, is there a submission, some faux pas, like if somebody does something in a submission that you're just like, nope.
Okay, so I'm very lenient, and I shouldn't be, because I know that especially the fiction is really strict, because they have to read so many words and so much that if contributors do not follow the absolute font, spacing, they'll get a little letter that says, please resubmit, or I can't take this because my eyes are going to drop out of my head. So I would say if you're a fiction writer, please follow our and if you're a nonfiction writer too, please follow them. But you will get scolded and reprimanded for not following, if you're sending in fiction and not following the guidelines. Maybe now, after I've said this, I'll have to be more stringent with my with my nonfiction submitters. But it's just so many words, and so over somewhat of a short period of time. And so any help you can give us with readable lines and fonts and we tell you what 12 point double space, the
basics. Okay. Okay, so we have a question here. If a story was in the final running of selections for an upcoming issue, but then it was rejected because the piece didn't fit with the issue and the writer is asked to submit again, will that submission be given more attention? And then I'm a little confused if the question is, should that writer submit the same piece again? But I'm guessing the answer is no. But then and this is a broader question, if you sent a very encouraging rejection to somebody, will that person then be given more careful attention for the next issue?
This is a fiction person. I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm guessing that the fiction editor now has that name in her head. And so they'll get more attention only because that name will be recognizable. our policy is to have it be a fresh piece, a new piece.
Okay, but the name, and should that person contact you personally and say, I just wanted to give you a heads up, I sent you another piece, thank you for that wonderful note, I just want to let you know there's another piece in the submissions queue, will that make any difference?
Yeah, that's speaking for the fiction editor.
For a nonfiction.
Yeah, if it were a nonfiction piece, sure, you can communicate with me. But I will recognize, I more than likely I will recognize the name because I've spent some time with that piece. If I've written a kind of a personalized note and have had that piece around for a while, it means it's been marinating for quite a while. Again, that's nonfiction, and I don't get as many pieces as fiction, but I think based on the question, the nonfiction or the fiction people will have that name clearly in their head.
Right. And it seems, I mean, across the board, it seems like editors agree that it will be positive and they'll pay attention to it's not a definite, it doesn't mean definitely yes, it doesn't mean, it just means, oh, I recognize this author, I'm thrilled that they're trying me again, I'm excited to read their work again, this is cool, but it doesn't mean like automatically it's an in.
Right. I mean, like I was speaking about that piece that I took this time. I mean, I think I've seen 7 of her pieces or 6, I'm not sure. And I absolutely loved her writing, but it was nothing was working for one reason or another. So yeah, it's
just keep trying.
Keep at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think it's fair to call that out in the cover letter as well, future submissions? Do you think is it fair to mention, it's like, hey, you had very nice comments about my last.
And that's part of the submittal. That's that's not a separate email like Becky, I think Becky's talking about. That's just within the communication with the submission. Certainly put it in there. But separate emails are fine for me. I don't know whether Leanne would encourage. I don't know. I just don't know. I can't speak.
It's probably not going to make a difference one way or the other. So just send the work, do your best work, and focus on sending.
And the poetry editors, again, I can't speak for them, but because poetry they get so much. I would say keep it in the submittable, in the submission for them, just to save them. Save their eyeballs. Yeah.
And it sounds like you're not getting as many should we take from this that you want more nonfiction?
Yes, and I'm pretty sure I've spoken to other nonfiction editors and working with the Los Angeles Review. It's kind of, I think it's across the board. There just aren't as many nonfiction writers as there are fiction writers and poets.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to switch genre. This is useful information. Start writing nonfiction. So you guys mentioned taking a hiatus. You're both teachers, and I'm guessing you're writers as well. So when all the work is piling up and all the stress, like what keeps you in the literary magazine game? What keeps you at it? What keeps you excited about it? Because I imagine if you've got a lot, you have family, you have work, and it's just, it's like yet another project on your plate. How do you, clearly you guys are very committed and excited about what you're doing, but how do you sort of maintain that? And what is it, I should ask also, like, what is it specifically about your magazine that you feel like, we gotta keep this going?
One thing that always gives me, that I really enjoy is working with the contributors to putting the issue together. And I guess the and the appreciation of being in the magazine. I guess that's kind of what keeps me going, is kind of the shared excitement we all get by putting the issue together and producing it, and kind of that a kind of thrill, I guess, of putting something out again and seeing it out there and seeing people react to it and comment on it. I think that's kind of what keeps me working away at it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, just again, the word voice, all the different voices. I'm so inspired by what I read every day when I'm reading in the queue, and it's inspirational. I feel like I'm connecting with people, and I really want to connect with these other writers, but I also want to be able to promote these other writers.
Mm-hmm.
And so however I can do that, Jim and I are both writing. So we know what the world's like when you're a writer. And yeah, I just, having the privilege of reading all these different stories and all these different, and especially with nonfiction, well, I can't say that, but with nonfiction, there's a lot of grit and confession and absolute tearing of the heart out and putting it on paper that I know it's a privilege that I get to read these things. It's like someone is bringing me into their intimate circle somewhat. And I feel like I need to honor that however I can. And it both feeds me and makes me want to promote as well.
That's actually really useful craft advice to try to, it's not easy, but write something that makes somebody else really want to publish you. Like write something that somebody else is going to feel like this is really vital. This needs to be out in the world. I think it's really useful for writers to hear that perspective from editors, because that's what you're doing. You're sort of serving as a medium to get this material out into the world. And so the writer's job is to produce that kind of material.
Well said. Yeah. Yes.
So what's on the horizon for you guys? You have a new issue coming out soon, or did it just release, or?
Very soon.
Okay.
Very, very soon. Yeah. Yeah. I have a queue of pieces to upload to SoundCloud, but we're just waiting for all of our pieces to we have some proofing that needs to get completed.
And you publish last time I checked, the pieces are available online. I think you have to download the issue to read it, or is it just on the website?
Right. Yes, we have print. we have a print version, and then a PDF or e-reader.
Okay.
A straight up PDF file, or one that works for most e-readers.
Okay.
And then also a Kindle specific version.
Was there I'm curious about the decision to just not have it like up on a website.
Yeah, I guess we will print excerpts of it. We'll once an issue comes out, we'll put up
post, not print. Yeah.
Post, yeah. But yeah, I guess it was what was in place. The PDF and hard copy when we started, and we added the excerpts piece, and I guess it's not something we've I guess looked at to much make the change.
We have talked about how much we do love a hard copy publication, and so we're not willing to. We have talked about being not willing to scuttle the hard copy for online only. We still need to talk about because when we say excerpt, it's not excerpts of each piece. It's an excerpt, like it's a full piece. So it's part of that issue. Right. And Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
something we're still talking about.
Yeah, I know. I like the idea that, I mean, it's like a whole cohesive, if you want to read it, you download it, it's a whole cohesive thing. It's not just sort of like scattered items on the web. Yeah. So how do people get more involved? Do you ever put out calls for assistant editors, or are you ever looking for readers? Is there some way to like get involved behind the scenes?
Yeah, we are, yeah, right now, I guess we're feeling pretty balanced right now,
Yeah.
but things definitely change. We added Jessica as a second editor
Mhm.
for poetry a few issues ago. Leanne just joined us a few issues ago. Isaac and Bernard as readers. So I think I shouldn't say anything about things being stable, because that will guarantee something will change. And
But I guess if people want to, you don't have a newsletter, is that correct? Or do you?
No, we kind of rely on social media. We tweet and Instagram and
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah.
That's how we communicate mainly.
Okay. So
Sounds
Twitter.
like we probably should have a newsletter, and we have
No,
talked
it
about
wasn't meant as
that was the long
condemnation
pause.
in any way. I think there are a lot of newsletters out there, and I think a lot of it just goes to spam. So it wasn't it was just an inquiry. But but on Twitter, people should follow you at TLR, right? I'll put the link. Editors never know their own Twitter handles, but I'll put all the information up there. But people should definitely read the journal, subscribe if they can, download it, submit, and do their best to follow what you guys are doing.
Yes, please.
Definitely. Yes. And the SoundCloud and the excerpts from the issue are both through our website. So, and those,
Okay.
Anybody can access those anytime. So
yeah, I'll put all the links up so people can get.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time today.
You're welcome. And yeah, issue 21 is imminent. Probably in the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
in the near future.
Everybody's summer schedule gets.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep our eyes out for it.
Well, and Becky, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Of course.